6 watercolor techniques. The first thing you need to do is divide up your paper into 6 parts. Grab a ruler, measure out a 1/2 inch from the top down, and then another 1/2 inch from the left side over. Grab your template that I've provided for you. You're going to line up those 2 edges, those little 2 tick marks, and you're going to trace around the square. Now your goal is to have a 1/2 inch between each square. So make sure that you are measuring out 1/2 inch on the sides and from the top to the bottom. At the end, you should have 6 nice even squares. For this assignment, you're going to get water, a large flat brush, other watercolor brushes, your paint, a brown paper towel to put underneath the paints so that if you make a mess, you can easily clean up. I also want you to grab a white paper towel and a white pastel. Please remember and follow the following rules. Never leave your brushes in the water. Never smash or flatten your brush on the bottom of your water container. Clean your paints and your brushes before class ends. Place your brushes upright, brush out in a cup to dry. Put your work on the drying rack. And the last rule, clean up your workspace before you leave. You're ready to begin once you tape every single side of your paper so that when the paper gets wet, it won't bevel as much and then your paint won't run all over the paper. For your first watercolor technique, grab a white oil pastel. Draw a fun design or picture, but make sure you're pressing pretty heavily onto the paper. The next thing you're going to do is put a lot of water in whatever watercolors that you want to use. And once you get your paintbrush full of the paint and the water, then you're going to paint over the drawing that you've created. As you're painting, really try hard to stay within the lines that you've created with your template. The second technique is called gradation. It's where you take one color at the very top and you make it as dark as possible, and then you keep adding water as you go down the paper and it gets lighter and lighter. The key to this technique is to make sure that there's more paint on your paintbrush than there is water, so that the very top is as dark as possible. Pick a color like blue or purple. The richer, the better. As soon as you have a nice, thick, dark color at the top, then you're going to slowly add water to your paintbrush and continue to go down the paper. This isn't an easy technique, but I know with practice you will perfect it eventually. With this technique, you might need to grab a tissue so that if any of the paint starts pooling, you can easily just dab it up. Now, the third technique is called dry brush. So your paints need to be fairly dry and there needs to be minimal water on your paintbrush. This technique is great for having the illusion of texture to your piece. I like using this technique to create grass. The fourth technique is called overlap. This technique takes a lot of patience because what you're going to do is in the beginning, you're going to put a lot of water on your paintbrush and very little paint. I am demonstrating this by doing some raindrops. After I let the paint dry completely, which does take time, then I'll go back over the area with more paint, less water. So then you get this overlap effect. For this watercolor technique, you need to cover up the rest of your work with some scratch paper. Splattering is a lot of fun, but it could be very messy. This requires 2 paintbrushes. One has the paint on it, and then the other one you're just going to use the handle and you're going to gently tap the paintbrush. Your 6th watercolor technique is called plastic wrap. You're going to take your fat flash brush, you're going to put water just on the flash brush, and you're going to cover the whole entire square with water. The next thing you're going to do is add color. So you're going to use a smaller paintbrush, you're going to add the water. I like to use several different colors, so first I'm going to just add the green and then I'm going to add some blue on there. In order for this technique to go smoothly, you need to have a lot of wet paint onto the surface. Once you put the paint on, grab your saran wrap, put it onto the area, squish it on there, kind of wrap it up, and then you just need to let it be until it completely dries. Once it completely dries, it's going to be a really cool texture. So now that the area is dried completely, I go back over the raindrops, overlapping what I've already done, but this time I'm adding more paint and less water, so that once everything dries, there's this translucent overlapping that takes place. Once you're completely done for the day, it's really important to clean your brushes properly. So I wanted to demonstrate how this is done. Then make sure you start out with a clean cup of water. Swizzle your paintbrush in the water, making sure that you aren't smashing it to the bottom. And then testing out your paintbrush on a clean white paper towel. You've just completed 6 watercolor techniques. You just need 6 more techniques to go.